They're telling their side of the story, and you're telling yours. No, you said persecution. With persecution, there's guilt. Don't bring up words. This is my business. If you talk about persecution, then you're talking about somebody's making you feel guilty. What I'm telling you is you're not guilty, but what you are is a possibility.
Hold on to your seats, folks, because we're about to dive into one of the most outrageous paternity court cases we've ever seen. Miss Kavanaugh and her mother, Michelle, are here today to prove that Mr. Bowles is the father of Miss Kavanaugh's 3-week-old son, Malcolm. But the twist? Miss Kavanaugh admits to being intimate with another man, Mr. Maliyah, during the window of conception.
Miss Kavanaugh, you and your mother are appearing in court today to prove paternity of your 3-week-old son, Malcolm. You claim his biological father is Mr. Bowles.
Yes, Your Honor.
Even though you admit to being intimate with another man, Mr. McElliott, during the window of conception.
Yes, Your Honor.
Now, Mr. Bowles claims he's positive he's not the father, even though he and Miss Kavanaugh were getting it on regularly. But get this, he found a condom wrapper in her bathroom, and he thinks that proves she was sleeping around. Miss Kavanaugh shuts that down real quick, saying the condom was actually her friend's.
Was only once, and with Mr. Bowles.
Well, ma'am, you seem to know more about it than she does,
Yeah,
so let me bring you on in. So you are Miss
I'm her
Kavanaugh,
mother.
you're her mom.
And I'm a good mother, and we have a close relationship, and she tells me everything.
That's great. I'm glad that you all are close.
Uh-oh, looks like Mr. Bowles is grasping at straws here, folks. And get this, Miss Kavanaugh even admits she lied about being pregnant in the first place, trying to use a fake pregnancy test to keep Mr. Bowles interested. Yikes, talk about desperate measures.
The reason why he believes he is not the father.
But did you tell him that you used that
No.
condom with your ex? So that's not true.
No, I feel like he's just trying to justify his reason.
All right, so now you find out you're pregnant.
Yes.
When you find out, who do you tell?
Your Honor, I told him. I told Mr. Bowles because that's who I believed was the father. It was the right date, right conception time.
But the real kicker? When Miss Kavanaugh took the real pregnancy test, it came back positive. Oops, looks like her little scheme backfired big time. Judge Lake is not impressed, that's for sure. She's calling out Miss Kavanaugh for her immaturity and lack of responsibility. And get this, Miss Kavanaugh even says she slept with Mr. McElliott to try and make Mr. Bowles jealous.
Because it didn't work at all. I told both of them at the time that I found out that I was pregnant. I told both of them.
Well, I'm glad you understand the error of your ways, because now you know. It takes a lot of this is why we're standing here today. You know, Mr. Bowles, I'm trying to understand your doubt fully.
And also, before she got pregnant, she actually lied about being pregnant maybe like some weeks before.
Now, Mr. Bowles is really throwing Miss Kavanaugh under the bus, saying she lied about being pregnant before she actually was. And get this, he even says he woke her up in the middle of the night to tell her he was gonna go sleep with another woman. Yikes, talk about disrespectful.
We fell asleep because I was tired. He wakes me up at 3 o'clock in the morning and tells me he's going to go have sex with another woman.
What?
Yeah, so
You wake her up to tell her that?
First of all, we was just friends, so I
so
can
just
leave and
because I
go
was asleep,
where
that justifies what you did?
we wasn't together, so I can leave and go back to my house and do whatever I want.
Miss Kavanaugh is rightfully furious, chasing him out of her house. Judge Lake is not having any of this nonsense, and she's laying down the law. She's making it clear that the responsibility of a child falls squarely on the mother, and these men need to start taking some accountability.
Signed the birth certificate and didn't care if he was the father and wanted to be with me. Even if he did that, I would still want my son to know who his true blood father is, because everybody deserves to know.
That's right. You know what? I think it's time we meet Mr. McElliott. Jerome, will you please escort him in?
But just when you think the drama couldn't get any crazier and walks Mr. McElliott, turns out he's actually been pretty great throughout this whole situation. He told Miss Kavanaugh he'd sign the birth certificate and be a father to the child, even if he wasn't the biological dad. Ah, what a stand-up guy.
Me and her, we met. I got her number. I called her that evening, offered her to go a movie. We hooked up and went out to eat or something like that. But ever since—
So you took her on dates and courted her and treated her like a lady should be treated?
Always.
Good.
Judge Lake is really laying into these men, calling them out for their irresponsible behavior. She's making it clear that the consequences of their actions fall squarely on Miss Kavanaugh's shoulders, and that's just not fair. The judge is preaching the importance of respecting yourself and not trying to trick a man into having a baby.
And I mean, I really couldn't understand how you can get facial features from an ultrasound, but—
Well, you can, but regardless, the point is she was talking about the baby as if this child could be yours. So as as you look at Malcolm, who do you think he looks like?
I want to say Mr. Bowles, but you can't always go on looks.
But just when you think the drama is over, Judge Lake screeches the proceedings to a halt. The envelope with the DNA test results is in her hands, and it's about to go down.
Mr. McElliott, you are not his father. Mr. Bowles, you are not his father. Calm down.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to put you guys through all that.
We've got a wild one on our hands today, folks. Miss Montoya and her son, Mr. Sensabaugh, claim that Miss Brown has been lying to them about the paternity of her daughter, Maliyah. And get this, Mr. Sensabaugh says a recent near-death experience has made these results more important to him than ever.
Ms. Montoya, you and your son, Mr. Sensabaugh, claim you've been lied to by the defendant about the paternity of her child on numerous occasions.
Yes, Your Honor.
Now you say a recent near-death experience makes today's DNA results more important to you than ever.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, let's dive in. Turns out Miss Brown and Mr. Sensabaugh were in a relationship, but it ended when he didn't show up to sign the lease on an apartment they were supposed to move into together. Miss Brown then went to visit her ex, and that's when things get really messy.
He had said that he was ready to man up and move in together, so I had found an apartment. I had an apartment that was ready for us to sign the paperwork. He was supposed to show up the date of us seeing the apartment and giving the money and signing the paperwork. He never showed up.
She's got a calendar outlining all her intimate encounters with both men, and it's clear there's some major doubt about who the father could be. Mr. Sensabaugh says he was told Miss Brown took a plane to Oklahoma, but her calendar shows she actually drove. Ooh, the lies are piling up.
When I had left California, I went to Oklahoma with my ex, and that's when the calendar comes in.
So after he didn't show up with the leasing office?
I left.
And how soon after you were intimate with Mr. Sensabaugh did you go down to see your ex?
It was soon.
Now, Mr. Sensabaugh says when he found out about the pregnancy, Miss Brown told him he was definitely the father. He even tried to get the baby to come live with him in California, but Miss Brown was worried about his lifestyle. The grandma is also getting emotional, saying her son has had 2 near-death experiences and she just wants the truth to come out.
Even lied about something else because I was told she took a plane to Oklahoma, and then when she got off the plane, she was throwing up, I guess, experiencing morning sickness. Now here we go, you drove?
Greg knew.
You told me. I don't know what you told Greg or what he knew.
I never told you that I took a plane to Oklahoma.
But wait, it gets even crazier. Miss Brown admits to a whole timeline of lies, including buying a DNA test and then not sending in the sample for months, just to string these poor people along. And then, get this, she allegedly told Mr. Sensabaugh's mom that she swabbed one of her other kids instead, just to make sure he wasn't the father. Wow, talk about playing games with people's lives.
You didn't talk to me until after you had your baby. That made me conclude that you didn't want to talk to nobody or say nothing so you could see who the baby resembled, so you can put that baby on somebody, and it just happened to be my son.
Mr. Sensabaugh's mom, Miss Montoya, is really feeling the weight of this situation. She says her son has been shot multiple times and she's worried he might not make it. She just wants to know if this little girl is her grandchild, so her 91-year-old grandmother can be a part of her life. But Miss Brown seems to be making it as difficult as possible.
All my children equally and dearly.
That's not
and
either, because regardless
not
of his,
right
like I explained to you, regardless of his lifestyle, I would have been the primary responsible person.
And you ain't had the
You're
best
not the
lifestyle
primary
over there
responsible
either.
person when we were sleeping together, so how can I take your word for that?
Oh, and get this, Miss Brown even tried to get Mr. Sensabaugh's mom to stop posting pictures of the baby on social media, saying it was causing her problems. But then it turns out Mr. Sensabaugh was the one who made and posted those pictures, not Miss Montoya. Talk about a tangled web. Miss Brown is clearly trying to keep this family at arm's length, but they're determined to get to the bottom of this.
Back in the butt, I got shot. So after that, it made me think, like, what if the baby was mine? Like, what if
You
that's
woke
my baby?
up thinking about Maliyah?
Yes.
And did you call Miss Brown and say?
No, I called his mother. I contacted his mother.
No, our first line of communication was you calling him to tell him that the baby was his.
All right, the moment of truth is finally here. The DNA results are in, and the judge is about to reveal whether Mr. Sensabaugh is the father of little Maliyah. The tension is palpable. You can practically feel it through the screen.
Mr. Sensabaugh, you are not her father. Ms. Brown, you look relieved. Ms. Montoya, you look crushed.
It's not about being crushed. At the end of the day, I really want him to go on with his life, get married, have a baby, and be able to be in that baby's life from birth.
And I wish the best for him and his future.
Miss Anthony and Mr. Porcio had a casual, party-focused relationship, but things got complicated when Miss Anthony ended up pregnant. She initially told Mr. Porcio the child was his, but then later claimed it belonged to her ex-boyfriend. This led to a whole mess of confusion and hurt feelings.
You claim you had a short-term relationship with the defendant, Mr. Porcio, who was initially excited when you told him you were pregnant. But now you are furious he is denying your 8-month-old son, Matthew. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Porcio, you say you've never taken Ms. Anthony seriously, and she herself confessed to sleeping with other men during the time of conception.
It's clear Miss Anthony was in a tough spot. She was young, scared, and didn't think Mr. Porcio was ready to be a dad. But lying about the paternity was a big mistake that ended up causing a lot of drama down the line. Mr. Porcio was understandably upset that he was denied the chance to be involved with his potential child from the start. The fact that Miss Anthony was also sleeping with other men during their relationship didn't help matters either.
I could tell you wasn't the father.
Her ex-boyfriend was the father, that she was pregnant before she met me.
And now you say he's denying the baby, but you admit to telling him he wasn't the father.
Yes, ma'am, I did, and I understand that was me being in the wrong. That was 100%. Most of this is my fault.
Things got even more complicated when Mr. Porcio ended up marrying his husband, Michael. Michael then got involved, claiming that Miss Anthony had directly told him the baby wasn't Mr. Porcio's. The he said, she said was enough to make your head spin. It's clear these two had a very messy, dysfunctional relationship that was full of lies, partying, and broken trust.
Or have a child.
But it was a sexual relationship.
Yes, it was.
Were you using protection?
No, Your Honor, we were not. And he was there, so that's why I'm mainly upset. You were there for the 25 minutes of pleasure. Well, it's been 9 months. It's been 9 months, and I bought every diaper. I bought every
if I was
formula.
The real kicker was when Michael showed up with evidence. Photos of Miss Anthony and Mr. Porcio together during the window of conception. This directly contradicted Miss Anthony's story that she had told Mr. Porcio the child wasn't his. The court was not impressed by her attempts to backtrack and claim she was just trying to do what was best for the baby at the time.
I can't do this. My son deserves better, or my child. When I didn't know it was a boy, but my child deserves better than this. I don't know what to do.
After she took the test, she looked me dead in my face and was like, "It's not yours."
That is a lie, and you know it. Don't be lying up in this courtroom.
I ain't got no reason to lie.
No. Let me finish. I laid down and I thought about it, and I realized that this man ain't gonna do nothing but party.
Mr. Porcio was clearly emotional about the whole situation, especially since he had been raised in the foster care system himself. You could tell he really wanted to be a good dad and provide stability for this child if the baby was indeed his. The fact that he hadn't even met the little boy yet was heartbreaking.
That was actually April. It was the first week of April was my conception time. That was April 4th. When that picture.
First picture, you two look happy together.
We were.
Cute couple, April 4th, 2015. Is that the window of conception?
Yes, ma'am.
When the DNA results finally came in, the reveal was a real shocker.
Mr. Porcio, you are the father. That's the first time I've seen you smile today, Mr. Porcio.
This is all he really ever wanted, is to have a child of his own, and specifically a son. So on his end and on my end, basically makes the child my stepchild.
Ms. Robinson is convinced that Mr. Rollins is her daddy, but he's adamant that he's 1000% sure he ain't the one who knocked up her mama, Ms. Palmer. Looks like we've got some serious family drama on our hands, folks. Let's dive right in and see how this one plays out, shall we?
Ms. Robinson, you and your mother have opened your case today in hopes of giving you closure. Yes. You say you've always known the defendant was your father, and his denial has crushed you. Once you prove that he is your dad, you hope he will finally accept you. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
First up, we've got Ms. Robinson taking the stand, and she's got a story that'll tug at your heartstrings. Turns out she's been believing that Mr. Rollins is her pops for the past 24 years, but the guy keeps shutting her down, saying there's no way he's the father. Mama Palmer's been telling her all this time that Mr. Rollins is the one, but he's just not having it.
Miss Palmer, all her life you have been telling her that Mr. Rollins is her biological father.
Yes, Mom.
You've never told her any other man was her biological father?
No.
And you've never gotten any level of recognition or acknowledgement from him?
No, I haven't.
Now Mr. Rollins, he's got a whole different take on things. This guy is so confident he's not the father. He's willing to bet the house on it. He's throwing around some wild accusations, saying Ms. Palmer was busy with multiple men back in the day, and that's why he's sure he ain't the one.
So, Your Honor, I ran down the stairs. He was in the apartment next to ours putting in furniture. I was like, well, is Doobie here? And they was like, he came out, he was like, well, this mean? So I asked him, I was like, well, are you my father? He was like, no, I'm not your father. I was like, well, my mom telling me you are my father. He was like, well, no, I'm not your father.
Oh, them's fighting words, folks, but hold on, it gets even crazier. Mr. Rollins even brought up some associates of his that he claims Ms. Palmer was getting cozy with. Yikes, talk about messy.
Switching your stories and stuff, that's not right.
I never switched the story.
Okay.
Are you a DNA tester? You don't know.
Okay.
Hold on, Mr. Rollins, what you not gonna do? What you not gonna do is be
prosecutor.
No, what you not, no, you're not gonna prosecute her because you don't have no law degree.
It seemed like
you're not a prosecutor. What you are, hold on.
Now the real drama starts when Ms. Robinson recalls that time when she was just 9 years old and tried to confront Mr. Rollins, asking him straight up if he was her daddy. But the guy just shut her down, saying, no, I'm not your father. Ouch, that's gotta sting. Ms. Robinson's not holding back, calling him out for not owning up to it, even if he wasn't sure.
Rejecting me because it was all her mother ever told her, right? So what, hold on. I'm listening to you testify, but in that testimony, what I'm not gonna allow you to do is further traumatize this young woman who for 24 years has been looking for her father, believing it was you.
But Mr. Rollins, he's got a whole other story. He claims he just saw this little girl observing him, and he figured there was no way she could be his kid since they don't look alike. This guy's got some serious issues, if you ask me. And the way he's talking about Ms. Palmer's multiple partners, yikes, talk about throwing shade.
But what you are is a possibility. So now listen, Mr. Rollins, I'm not gonna do a verbal dance with you because I'm gonna win that contest every time. So what I'm gonna do, we're not gonna do that. What we're gonna do is we're gonna get down to the facts so that we can get this young woman some answers, and you too.
Things really start to heat up when Ms. Robinson brings up that time in 2015 when Mr. Rollins showed up to her baby's first birthday party with a DNA test in hand. Apparently, he wanted them to do the test right then and there, but they realized it wasn't that simple. Guess he's not too familiar with how these DNA tests work, huh?
Tell you.
Verbally stated.
She had multiple parts. She was multitasking.
No, I was not. You probably were multitasking. I know I would.
You're saying in a polite way she was having sex with more than one man during that time.
Exactly.
And you know that for a fact because these men were associates of yours?
Yes, ma'am.
And then the big bombshell. Ms. Robinson shows the judge a side-by-side photo of Mr. Rollins and his own mama, and lo and behold, the resemblance is uncanny. Looks like Mr. Rollins can't deny the family resemblance anymore. He even admits he sees it now after all this time. Guess he's finally starting to come around, but the damage may already be done, if you ask me.
You don't understand today, I'm not that, but I'm not, I'm sorry. I mean, if I am, I'm gonna hold up to my responsibility.
That's good to know.
Your Honor, when he came there, they was in the kitchen talking, and he gonna say, let me see your feet. Your feet do not look like mine. And he said, your mama been sleeping with a lot of men.
And just when you think this case couldn't get any more dramatic, the judge drops the mic. The DNA results are in, and you probably won't guess which way this one will go.
Mr. Rollins, you are not the father.
Well,
you are not the father.
Baby, I'm sorry.
It was just my mistake, but I know I didn't sleep with nobody else.
Well, we know that that's a lie. When I read the result and he was not the father.
Miss Baker is suing her husband, Mr. Baker, to prove that their 3-month-old son, Caleb, is his. Sounds simple enough, right? Well, not so fast. Mr. Baker claims it's medically impossible for him to be the father, and he's ready to walk away from the family if the DNA results don't go his way. It's a high-stakes situation.
Ms. Baker, you say the fate of your marriage is riding on today's DNA results. You are suing to prove that your 3-month-old son, Caleb, was fathered by your husband, Mr. Baker.
Yes, Your Honor.
And Mr. Baker, you say it's medically impossible for you to have a child, and therefore Caleb cannot be yours. You say if the DNA results prove you are not the father, you will leave your wife.
Turns out Mr. Baker had a vasectomy a whopping 23 years ago. Now he's convinced that there's no way he could have fathered this child. But Ms. Baker has a different story. She admits to drinking heavily during the time she got pregnant, and she can't even remember if she was intimate with another man. Uh-oh. This is starting to sound like a real mess.
And we didn't do everything right. And I don't condone the actions that we took in our relationship. I was married, she was married. And whenever you have two people who are in a monogamous relationship come together the way that we did, there's always going to cast doubt on the back of your mind.
Now, Mr. Baker's got some trust issues of his own. Apparently, Ms. Baker had a little spending problem in the past, and she even went on the Oprah Winfrey Show to talk about it. Mr. Baker's worried that if she could lie about that, who's to say she's not lying about this too? Looks like these two have some serious baggage to unpack.
There were spending issues that were taking place in the marriage that he didn't know about. And I mean, to the point where, you know, that had put her in national limelight because she was overspending behind his back.
But wait, there's more. Mr. Baker reveals that he and Ms. Baker actually met while they were both still married to other people. Yep, you heard that right. They had an affair that led to this whole situation. No wonder there's so much doubt and mistrust in this relationship. These two really didn't start off on the right foot.
Not cheated on Mr. Baker, Your Honor. There's no recollection of anything ever happening to me while I was drinking, but just that thing in the back of my mind just keeps going, you know, did something happen to me and I just don't remember.
So the truth is that you don't really remember. You don't recall because of the drinking.
Correct, Your Honor.
As the case unfolds, we learn that when Ms. Baker first found out she was pregnant, she was convinced she had ovarian cancer instead. Can you imagine the roller coaster of emotions she must have been going through? Thankfully, it turned out to be a pregnancy, but that didn't make things any less complicated.
So since it's been 23 years after a vasectomy, you've got to question, is it even possible for me to even conceive a child?
When you found out you were pregnant, you told your husband.
Well, what happened is I noticed I was getting a little bit of a belly.
Now the court brings in an expert witness, Dr. Gator, to shed some light on the whole vasectomy situation. Turns out, even though Mr. Baker had the procedure done over 20 years ago, there's still a slim chance, about 1.5%, that he could have fathered this child. Whoa, who would have thought?
So you thought for a minute that this
Absolutely.
was cancer?
Yes, Your Honor. I let her sleep through the night. I didn't sleep a wink. Went to work the next day. She calls me up at 11 o'clock crying hysterically. And I said, honey, what's wrong? She says, I'm not pregnant.
Ms. Baker is clinging to that 1.5% chance, convinced that this is a miracle from God. She's been sober since finding out she was pregnant, and she's determined to make this work. But Mr. Baker, he's still struggling with the idea of trusting his wife, especially after all the drama in their past.
Forget it. And we threw the package away. And then 6 months later, we regretted that we threw it away and we ordered a second one. And then we went through the same process again, and regrettably, we threw away that second one.
And now your wife is pregnant.
You know, my attitude is very simple. It better be a miracle from God.
As the judge tries to navigate this tangled web of emotions, it's clear that there's a lot more at stake than just the paternity of this child. These two have been through the ringer, and their entire family is hanging in the balance. Will the DNA results finally bring them the clarity they need? Or will this case leave more questions than answers?
Mr. Baker, you are the father.
Thank you. I love you too.
You know, this is a courtroom where very special things happen, right, bro? But this, I must say,
it's just been a very tough road.